Pep Watsons, Crime and Justice TV. This is Reflections, episode 5. Welcome everybody. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all in good health. So, as you can see from the image, I'm down here at King's College in London, which is at Waterloo. I've just attended day school here for my degree that I'm studying with the Open University, Bachelor of Science in Criminology and Psychology. I'm coming to the end of my fourth module. So this day school today was preparation for my next essay. I've got 2 more essays and then I'll be doing exams at the end of this academic Open University year in May. And then I have the summer to myself, which is nice. I'm looking forward to that. First summer in London. First summer as a free man. And then I go back in October to start my 5th module, and then I start my final module next year. So I'm starting to kind of see the finish line on the horizon, which is a nice feeling. It's been a long slog. It's took me years and years to get to this situation, which I'm going to touch on in a minute. I haven't got any kind of structure for this episode of Reflections. I'm just kind of freestyling it, really. Just going to talk about some of the issues that are on my mind, some of the things that are going through my mind after this day school tutorial. So there's a good mix of people in there, as always. They're all female. One of them works with the police in North London, another one does lots of charity work, mental health. The lecturers, as always, were immersed in knowledge, wisdom, very academically capable. So yeah, just went in there, soaked it up, took as many notes as I could. I am a little bit behind with my studies at the moment. So mainly due to because I'm uploading a lot of YouTube content, so it's put me behind a little bit. So I'm just getting used to editing the videos for YouTube, so hopefully that process will speed up and I can upload more videos and keep on top of my studies and catch up on my studies. So yeah, it was good today to get some good tips on preparing for the exam that I'm going to be doing in May. So like I said, I've got no structure, I'm just freestyling this episode, so I'm going to talk about a couple of issues. The first issue I want to talk about is education. And specifically the issue of education for marginalised groups. And specifically education for those from poor socio-economic communities and backgrounds. On my other videos, specifically the Sean Atwood podcast, which is now up to over 160,000 views, it's been a great success, and I've recently showcased that as a success for not just United Kingdom youth justice, but for global youth justice on my recent part 3 Sean Atwood Pep Watsons podcast 100,000 views comments response. And I showcased it as a success for global youth justice because it shined a huge light onto these young offenders institutions and secure units, not just in the UK but all over the world, that for too long have been these kind of dark, neglected places where horrendous abuse happens. And as a result of the podcast, what's materialised from that with Sean Atwood is that now there's a light being shined onto these places, and that's a good thing. That's a massive step in the right direction for global youth justice, and to shine a light on the things that happen in these kind of places, these schools of crime entrenched with institutional racism and abuse and horrific suicides, child suicides. And I encourage in that other video modern thinking, penal reformers and modern thinkers and aspiring grassroots up-and-coming politicians to very, very carefully consider the fact that when the state harms the children and young offenders in their care in said institutions, they are in essence harming society. And when the state harms those children and young offenders in their care, they are not offering the proportionate justice for victims of crime that victims of crime deserve, and they are also creating lifetime chronic recidivists and creating a conveyor belt of future victims of crime. And at the end of the Sean Atwood podcast, I speak about the importance of education for children. And Sean asks me at the end, is there anything I want to say to young people around the world who are going down the wrong path? They might be involved in knife crime, they might be involved in drugs, they might have just started getting into trouble with the police, their family unit might have broken down, they might be struggling at home, at school, they might be being bullied, And I emphasize the importance of choosing to get yourself an education. And if you get yourself an education, that will open so many doors of opportunity for you and will give you the tools and the resources and the knowledge and the expertise to build hopefully what will be a happy, successful life for you, for your future, where you can have a rewarding and fulfilling life and not a life involved in drug addiction and crime and recidivism, going to prison and getting abused and possibly ending up dying or killing yourself in one of these institutions. But the reality is that education for people from marginalised groups and people from poor socio-economic communities is not always easy to access. And that's the reality. So I want to touch on that point in the sense that I want to share my experience. Just recently, the last module I'd done for my degree, I was detained in prison in HMP Winchester because I was recalled subject to the IPP life license for failing 2 drug tests. And I was recalled into HMP Winchester, or the cesspit of humanity that is HMP Winchester. And after 6 years of being free on IPP life license, I was hauled from my flat, my home, with my job, by 3 police officers, taken into custody for breaching this IPP license and hauled into this prison without committing a crime. And I went into this establishment, Winchester Prison, I was on B wing, on C wing, and I was on these units, and it was just non-stop chaos, violence, a drug epidemic of proportions that I've never ever witnessed or ever seen before. Excuse me. A mental health epidemic, all night, people crying, screaming, stringing up, harming themselves, coming out their cells covered in blood from self-inflicted razor blade wounds. There was 4 suicides when I was there. I think one of them was only 18. I saw multiple men being sectioned to high security hospitals, losing their minds, delirious, psychologically broken. These guys are coming into prison already damaged, and the prison is just finishing them off and absolutely destroying them psychologically, physically, mentally. There was minimal purposeful activity to engage with. And I was determined to make use of this time, and I wanted to study and I wanted to continue with my degree. That's the beauty of the Open University. You can study it supposedly while you're in custody. You can study through the Open University at home, self-study and such like. But the reality is, in HMP Winchester made it as difficult as possible for me to study that 9-month module while I was there. They made it so difficult, it just got to the point where you're just like, what's the point? They refused me access to computers, saying that Open University is not something that is classed as suitable to be using the IT suite. I put multiple complaints in about it. It was just I had to fight. As always, the complaints procedure in prison is a complete joke. They don't reply on time, and then they don't reply at all. I think they just shred them, because the officers were always chasing up these complaints. They never replied to me. They never let me use computers. So they were forced me into a situation where I had to write TMAs or essays to length by hand. So if I had to write a 2,500 word essay, I would have to write it out by pen on A4 paper. If I got to 1,000 words and then reread it and noticed one or two themes that I've missed, that I should have put in there, or noticed a specific theorist that I should have put in there as evidence to back up an argument or a claim, I would have to rip up the 1,000 words that I'd already written and restart it. So I'd sit at my desk in my cell for 18 hours, writing, rewriting this essay to length by hand, all because they refused me access to the computers. And I had to keep fighting, for my education. And I completed the module in the end. It was an amazing feeling. And also in the prisons, in the prisons in England and Wales, they only do literacy and numeracy up to level 2, which is like the equivalent to a D grade GCSE. Now, because most of the people who go to prison are from marginalised groups and from poor socio-economic communities, most are unemployed and have poor history of employment. Most don't have education. So many, a large proportion, have been expelled from school and have the literacy and numeracy age of the average 11-year-old. Yet they only teach and deliver up to grade 2, level 2 numeracy and literacy. And once you reach that level and you pass, these kind of basic writing and numbers qualifications, they take you off the course, and you can't study anything else. So the whole system is structured in a way which prevents a person in prison being educated and educating themselves. You can't go any further than level 2. And this is the situation in the British penal system in modern 21st century Britain, in the 5th richest nation on Earth, and meanwhile we're sending probes and rockets to Mars. And I also said on the Sean Atwood podcast, the best artists I've met have been in prison. The best footballers I've played with have been in prison, predominantly black and from London. The best musical artists that I've ever met personally, songwriters, poets, singers, MCs, rappers, have all been in prison. And I went further as well, and I said, some of the people I've met have been so skilled and so gifted that they could be physicists or scientists. Like, they are that gifted, but they're not given the resources and the opportunities and the tools to not even fulfill their potential, but to even recognize their own potential. There's no avenues or channels for that process to materialize in any way, shape or form. Quite the contrary, the state harms the prisoners in their care and doesn't help them. And in essence, like I said previously, that then harms society. So prisoners come to prison uneducated and leave uneducated, but they might have a level 2 in maths and English, which, like I said, is the equivalent to a grade D GCSE. So what my message is to people all over the world who are listening to this, children, young people, older people who are trying to make a change in their life, it's never too late to embark on an educational journey. You might be in your 40s or 50s. There's people in there who study at the Open University at this university here that are in their 40s. If you're trying to make changes in your life and you're trying to educate yourself, my message to you is it's not easy, and people the way that things are structured in modern day British society are in a manner which does not encourage you to gain that education. The world doesn't owe you anything as well, so you got to fight for this. You got to fight for your education. You've got to, when you get setbacks and knockbacks, you've just got to keep getting up. You might not get funding. You might be applying for funding, they knock you back. Don't quit. Look for other funding. Everything happens for a reason. You got to persevere, keep fighting. And success, more often than not, is defined by, or can be defined by, the extent of the sacrifices that one had to sacrifice in order to achieve said success. So have a think about some sacrifices you might have to make. You might have to move geographically to a different area. You might have to cut off a few friendships, a few negative influences. You might have to stop drinking. You might have to put a lot of work into to some of these areas. The successes that I've had, my freedom, it has, and the achievements I've made with my studies and the work that I've done in restaurants. I've had to make huge sacrifices. I've had to move 200 miles away from my daughter and my mum. I've had to sever ties with lifelong friends who I still miss. So, I still miss some of them dearly, but I've had to make huge sacrifices to get to where I am today. So that's my message today. You've got to make sacrifices and don't quit. Just carry on. Keep persevering. Because the way society is structured is structured in a way where it's going to continuously put barriers in your way and in your path to prevent you from educating yourself and getting you an education. But I promise you, if you persevere and you overcome these barriers and you get yourself into a position where you can engage with education courses and college courses, what's on offer is just incredible. What's on offer is a life beyond your wildest dreams, happiness, wisdom, knowledge, opportunities, relationships, the people that you meet. The people I've met here today, just fantastic people. Took a couple of numbers, added them on WhatsApp. You're constantly expanding the network. And desistance from crime is a process, not an event, right? So what's important in that process is that we develop relationships, and we develop relationships, healthy relationships, with the kind of people that I've met here today at the university. People who are like-minded, who are aspiring for good things, people who are pursuing education and positive activity and positive goals and positive dreams and positive ambitions. And the more that I embrace and seek out these type of positive relationships, the more that I desist from the criminal justice system and crime and criminal activities and drug abuse and alcoholism and gambling and sex addiction, whatever it is, all of these kind of vices. The more I feel better when I do this, it improves my self-esteem. And these relationships, I can't emphasize this point enough, the more of these relationships I have, the happier I become, and the more fulfilled I am, because these relationships give me the channel, the resource, the space to express myself and express my hopes and my desires and my fears, which I can't do when I'm entrenched in drug addiction or criminality, and I'm living day to day, the fast cash, just trying to survive. So I hope you enjoyed episode 5, Reflections. And that's everything from me. That's it from me, Pepsi Watson, Crime and Justice TV. I hope you enjoyed. I wish you all good health and prosperity, and may you love by recognizing yourself in others.